Hi everyone, welcome to this special GoldFIsh Report series titled Bullet Points. Today is January 24th, 2019, and as our viewers may know, Bullet Points focuses on a certain area of policy that is prevalent right now and relevant to major events that are going on within our country, within the United States. The bullet points presentation is going to be broken up into two parts. And just so our viewers become familiar with how this operates, we have a new Vimeo channel. It is a Vimeo on demand. So we'll be presenting half of the report for free on YouTube and BitChute, and then we will have a link in the description section to the rest of the report, which you can rent or purchase and create as a library for your own records. But this is basically an academic review of we look at it a little bit more in depth so that we get a greater understanding of what the policy issues are that we're dealing with. And this week, we're going to be reviewing basically the government shutdown, the furlough, and the RIF, which is reduction in force. We're going to look at this very carefully because, as I reported earlier in the GoldFIsh Report, POTUS report this week, there's a question as to whether or not this is part of a plan to completely change, restructure the government from President Trump, and how successful can he be at doing this with certain departments? Because what we have seen, and we did screen share this earlier in the week. I'm going to start with a YouTube video that I think it's not representative of every government worker, but it's definitely representative of a lot of government employees, and I'm going to screen share that very briefly for you.
Technically, everything I'm doing with ESA is stuff I'm not supposed to be doing for work. So like it's explicitly prohibited. So if they find out, I can get if you're an executive branch agency, you can slow all things to a degree that it's ineffective, and maybe you get in trouble, and maybe you get fired or you resign, whatever. But you slow them down for a certain period of time. I have a friend who works as a contractor for DOD, and he has a TS clearance, and he's really.
Okay, so I think that's enough that we could see. And what we see is a problem with what we have here is we have some actual what would be socialist or communist people who are working within the government, who are working at the government on the government payroll while they are conducting these communist socialist activities. And it's very concerning. And the president, as you know, like even a government job it's not meant to be a lifetime job. But I do give a lot of people who work at the government, who are honest people with integrity, I give them a lot of credit. But what we're going to do is we're going to take a quick look I put together a good summary, I would say, of these issues regarding the government shutdown, what this means with regard to furlough, with regard to what does that mean, who's included in that, what departments are available. I'm going to start this PowerPoint presentation right now. So slideshow and start from the beginning. So here we go. It's called Bullet Points, and it's no secret that we are in favor of the Constitution, of the Second Amendment. We are pro-Second Amendment, pro-First Amendment, pro all the amendments. We are constitutionalists at the GoldFIsh Report. There's no question about that. What we're going to take a look at today is called government shutdown, furlough, RIF. This has to do with presidential powers too, and the fact that this is a power that the president has to shut the government down. And then these are the different ways that the government can do that. But it's very specific, and we're also going to talk about the senior executive service and how that is going to be impacted by either a furlough or a reduction in force. And it's very interesting because the reason it matters is it's something that we will be talking about soon. So in terms of the government shutdown and the furlough, let's begin. A furlough, what is a furlough? A furlough is the placing of an employee in a temporary non-duty, non-pay status because of lack of work or funds or other non-disciplinary reason. Okay, there's two types of furloughs basically. Okay, this is from the Office of Personnel Management. There's an administrative furlough, which is a planned event by an agency, which is designed to absorb reductions necessitated by downsizing, reduced funding, lack of work, or any budget situation other than a lapse in appropriations. Furlough that would potentially result from sequestration would generally be considered administrative furloughs. The second kind of furlough is the furlough we are dealing with right now, a shutdown furlough, which is also called an emergency furlough. Occurs when there is a lapse in appropriations and can occur at the beginning of a fiscal year. If no funds have been appropriated for that year, or upon expiration of a continuing resolution, if a new continuing resolution or appropriations law is not passed. In a shutdown furlough, an affected agency would have to shut down any activities funded by annual appropriations that are not expected by law. Typically, an agency will have very little to no lead time to plan and implement a shutdown furlough. What is a shutdown furlough and why is a shutdown furlough necessary? In the event that funds are not available through an appropriations law or continuing resolution, a shutdown furlough occurs. A shutdown furlough is necessary when an agency no longer has the necessary funds to operate and must shut down those activities which are not accepted pursuant to the Anti-Deficiency Act and so forth. We have it cited there, which you can go into do further research on if you'd like. See guidance from the Office of Management and Budget and the Department of Justice for further information on appropriations matters. The Appropriations Committee, folks, you all know, is where these budget bills are introduced, and where we're trying right now, the president's trying right now very hard to get some deals on the table to end this government shutdown. So this just provides a little bit more information in another way that the guidance applies to fund activities that are funded by annual appropriations. So some agency functions have alternative funding sources. So they can keep some employees on and use those alternative funding sources to continue their operations, whereas other aspects of the government might not have that, and so they would have to close down. So in other words, the courts can keep going for a certain amount of time because they have alternate funding sources. Of course, that's us, the taxpayer. When we go in, there's court fees, when you filing fees for courts, fines when you go into courts. They have a Dun and Bradstreet rating. Our court systems are corporations, folks. They rake in a lot of money. So they have alternative funding sources. So the court system likely will not be affected by this until they run out of those funds, I suppose. So employees performing those functions will generally continue to be governed by the normal pay, leave, and other civil service rules. Agencies should consult with their legal counsel if they have further questions concerning this distinction. And of course, employees should consult with their human resource office. So this gives you, and here's a link, you can also look up yourselves if you want more information. Anyone who's a government employee who might be looking for information, certainly you'd probably have all of this, but this is another resource. But we have something called accepted employees. Who are accepted employees? In the context of a shutdown furloughs, the term accepted is used to refer to employees who are funded through annual appropriations, who are nonetheless accepted from the furlough because they are performing work that by law may continue to be performed during a lapse in appropriations. Accepted employees include employees who are performing emergency work involving the safety of human life or the protection of property, or performing certain other types of accepted work. Agency legal counsels, where did that go off? legal counsels working with senior agency managers determine which employees are designated to be handling accepted and non-accepted functions. So I think it has to do, the term accepted has to do more with the function. Okay, and then here's another link that you can look that up if you want to go further into that aspect. But who are exempt employees? Employees are exempt from furlough if they are not affected by a lapse in appropriations. So this includes employees who are not funded by annually appropriated funds. If you have an annual appropriated fund then or expense, and we're going to talk about that in the second half of this video because it does refer to senior executive service executives, okay, and what that means and who they are, because they are a very different group, and it's important to understand who they truly are. Okay, so employees performing those functions will generally continue to be governed by the normal pay, leave, and other civil service rules, which is kind of what we said before. Individuals, now here is where we're getting into this. Individuals appointed by the president with or without Senate confirmation who are not covered by the leave system in United States Code 5, Chapter 63, or an equivalent formal leave system are not subject to the furlough. Based on opinions of the Office of Legal Counsel, Department of Justice, the Anti-Deficiency Act prohibiting a prohibition on creating a budgetary obligation before an appropriation is made, if not applicable, if the obligation is otherwise authorized by law. So, like, not all jobs are authorized by law, but certain jobs are. So jobs that are authorized by law are jobs that are exempt from furlough. Okay, let's keep going. So how is shutdown furlough documented? The first thing is, unlike administrative furlough, so there's different processes here. It's why I wanted to I was listening to a lot of YouTubers and I thought there was a lot of misunderstanding about the facts of how these work, and that's why I really wanted to bring out more details of this, more of kind of like an academic review. Unlike administrative furlough, agencies should not prepare an SF-50, which is notification of personnel action. Okay, so this is a list form of notice for a group of employees who are to be furloughed on the same day or days each pay period, okay, at the outset of a shutdown furlough. Instead, employees will receive a shutdown furlough notice citing the reasons for the furlough because the ultimate duration of a shutdown furlough is not known by agencies. That's the emergency furlough, shutdown furlough. It's not known by agencies. When it's the other, when it's an administrative furlough, it's all planned in advance, so it's different. That's why. Okay, so once an appropriation has been signed by the president, agencies will be instructed on the appropriateness of preparing documentation consistent with chapters 15 and 16 of the Guide to Processing Personal Actions. So we have lots of citations in here regarding, details that you can look up, and further for your further investigation if you'd like. But we are going to be presenting some of them here, so probably more in the second part. So in addition to a shutdown furlough notice, what other documentation should be provided to furlough employees? And this is important to know just because if you hear people getting another slip or another, how it happens, it's very official, okay? So agencies should provide each furloughed employee a Form SF-8 notice to federal employee about unemployment insurance. This form provides information on filing unemployment compensation claims, including the agency's mailing address and federal identification code. Employees may be asked to provide or refer to this form when they file a claim with their state unemployment insurance agency. So a review: to initiate a furlough, the government must notify affected non-essential employees of the furlough in writing. And when we say non-essential, that video I showed you in the beginning of this report, it would look like that would be one of the non-essential employees. Government should only have essential employees. Non-essential, we really shouldn't have. We're kind of paying for something we don't need, it seems like. This notice must include directions as to how to conduct orderly shutdown activities. So that's really important to know. Some may receive notice to return to work for a limited basis to complete those activities. So that's kind of what happens. they're going to be, furloughed. They're going to receive a notice of the shutdown. They're going to be given some time to return to work and conduct whatever shutdown operations they need to do. So that's how that's going to work. What procedures and appeal rights are applicable for non-career, limited term, and limited emergency employees in this? Oh, this is the Senior Executive Service and reemployed. Okay, holding career. Okay, this is regarding the SES, which we didn't get to yet, and we're going to, because this is referring to something I'm going to talk about in the next section, and how should an agency handle a probationary SES appointee. Okay, again, we're going to get into the SES, and I think this is about a good time to stop with this report and just give you that basic background. We're going to get into more details regarding the whole Senior Executive Service branch, which are basically a pool of executives that work right under all the cabinet level people that the president appoints to his cabinet. These are the executives that basically work underneath the president. And quite honestly, it's a little concerning, because what you find with these senior executives, they actually have, it's like the revolving door. Okay, this is why I thought it was very important to talk about this in the context of our report tonight, because they basically have a revolving door, and I'm going to show you what some of this means before we stop this portion of the video and we go into the next portion. What I'm going to screen share. Hold on a second. Here we go. This is the website for Senior Executive Services. And so I'll just go to the home page. The home page explains what this is. Senior Executive Association Presidential Rank Awards Leadership Summit was a full day. Well, this talks about the summit. Here it is. Senior Executive Association is the professional association for career members of the Senior Executive Service and equivalent positions. Okay. Senior Executive Association is not only the voice of career leaders through a strong advocacy program, it empowers senior leaders across government by providing the tools, resources, and connections they need to succeed in the 21st century. Okay, Senior Executive Association members receive access to research and news, strategic networks, and connections to the good practices across government that they may not receive on the job. Okay, above all else, Senior Executive Associate members are guided and dedicated to public service and to help career federal leaders better serve the American people. Through membership, they can transform the government, whatever. So if you go through the website and you really take a look at it, it says communities of change. And I don't know, I kind of was a little bit concerned about this, because it talks about communities of change as if this is an agenda to change communities. So when you look into it a little bit more, they're involved in national security, human capital leadership. What does that mean? Governance innovation, fiscal accountability, cyber community acquisition within this. Okay, the acquisition within the limits of this charter under the supervision of the Senior Executive Administration Board of Directors works collaboratively with SEA members and key stakeholders to develop programs and policies that improve the overall effectiveness of senior executives and other leaders within the federal government. When we say key stakeholders, what does that mean? Key stakeholders. Well, if you take a look at this website and you go into it a little bit more, you'll find out that the people who are running and these senior executive services are related to Serco. Serco is a company. You want to know what does Serco stand for? What does it do? What does it run? It says here, if you just Google the name, it runs prisons. So what's going on here? I'm trying to connect the dots. What does Serco do? Let's go to the next search. Serco processes 4 millionth patent application for U.S. Patent and Trademark Office. Really? We have an outside company that processes patents for the Patent Office? Why do we need that? So folks, if if your spidey senses are telling you something's not right, it's because something is a little bit, not right. And I'm going to also refer to this particular article by Covert Geopolitics. It says the deep state swamp can be defeated right now. Here's how. And here we hear, I'm going to read a little bit for you. We've recently received some files from our friend John about what American patriots are doing to stave off the powers of the deep state, as represented by a group calling themselves as the Senior Executive Services, which regularly dictates what both houses of the U.S. Congress should pass into law for the sheeples to abide by. That would be you and me. Through the activities of the Senior Executive Service within the upper echelons of the government, we can see that the Jesuits need not do the critical routines publicly on their own, giving them ample time to focus more on the spiritual welfare of the masses. Interesting. However, another core component of the deep state's power is Serco. Officially, Serco claims to be top 250, a FTSE top 250 company managing over 500 contracts worldwide, employing over 50,000 people. We operate internationally across 4 geographies: UK, Europe, North America, Asia Pacific, and the Middle East, and across 5 sectors: defense, justice and immigration, transportation, health, and citizen services. Under the radar, however, Serco controls the U.S. Patent Office, and you already know what that means. So I'm going to stop here, folks, and I think that, we're getting into some deep politics now. And so I just want to, one of the reasons of doing this presentation is to kind of dig a little bit deeper into what just looks like is sitting on the surface of this issue, but it's far deeper of an issue. This government shutdown, the wall, the funding, the appropriations, it's all part of a bigger strategy, I believe, that the president and his military behind him are looking at in terms of really making changes within this country to protect it, to be more economically sound. Because if there's one thing we know, the Trump doctrine is financial security. Financial security is national security. So, that's what I think the Trump doctrine is. And I'm going to leave it at that for right now. And if you would like to continue this conversation and look at the rest of the report that goes into some detail regarding whether or not this government shutdown can include members of the Senior Executive Service, whether a reduction in force can help clean out some of those workers, those non-essential employees, like maybe the one we saw in the beginning of this report, and maybe others too. I'm also going to go through all the different departments that have been, where employees have been furloughed. And we're going to paint a picture at the end of this that's going to give us an idea really of where President Trump's overall objective is in terms of this government shutdown, and how he's such a master chess player. It really seems like, the Democrats are falling right in his traps. And, in a selfish way, I mean, they're kind of shooting themselves in the foot by being so stubborn and not willing to negotiate to get these people back to work. Or quite honestly, they're so concerned about migrants. How come they're not that concerned about Americans? So Oh, I saw a meme today on Facebook and it says because Americans don't vote for them anymore. So that kind of sums it up, folks. I'm going to leave it there. If you want to continue this, we'll go over to the link in the description section here in this video, and we can finish this report, which I think you will find very interesting. So thanks for joining us.